And Channel 404, a special broadcast of the MPC's decision this afternoon at the Reserve Bank. Your repo rate cut by 25 basis points. It brings that rate to 6.75%. Your prime lending rate at banks now standing at 10.25%. Well, let's get some analysis on what happened there at the Reserve Bank when that rate cut was announced. Joining me, senior economist at NKC African Economics, Elise Kruger. Thanks for coming in. And then, of course, Executive Chief Economist Lesiba Motata at Alexander Forbes Investments. Lesiba, thanks for coming in.
Pleasure.
All right, so Elise, let me start with you. 25 basis points cut this afternoon. It was a possibility, but I think many people thought that the Reserve Bank would wait out and do this at the next meeting. It didn't happen.
Yes, I think the case has been building for a while, with inflation, dipping below the 6% target level, and with the economy in recession. So I think we've all been saying, the case is building. But I think we maybe had the timing wrong. As I expected them to maybe signal today, and also perhaps given the political developments around, the bank, the mandate sort of shenanigans that we've seen, I thought that might have had a bit of more of an impact. But listening to the governor, it's clear there's no question about the mandate, and I think the support he also got, from the Minister of Finance and from Parliament and so on, sort of strengthened his hands, and maybe the situation would have been more difficult if it wasn't for that. But I think it's a correct decision. I think economy in recession, inflation dipping, we expect 4.6 in the next month. So then you start to look at the real interest rate opening up, which gives some room for monetary policy loosening. And I think, as you said, it will not help economic growth a lot, but on the margin, it will help a household that's sort of on the verge of collapsing. So I think that will just give a bit of relief, in combination, obviously, with some other factors like a potential drop in petrol price and so on.
Lesiba, are we on a trend now of cuts? Do we expect cuts to happen again? What did you take away from how we justified this?
No, I don't think this will be a cycle that is deep in terms of cuts. At best, there'll be one more. And I don't see it coming through as a persistent reduction of interest rates from hence. There are still risks. They did say that the inflation outlook, the risks are balanced at this point in time. Yeah. They have said, however, they're concerned that the inflation expectations remain anchored at the upper end. They prefer it to the midpoint. With all that, it suggests that we are not going to see very deep interest rate cuts, especially when the ECB is beginning to talk about tightening, when the US continues to tighten. So under that environment, I find it very difficult to see anything more than a 50 basis points, including today's cut of any interest rates going forward.
Now that's for the rest of the year. Elise, what do you think was the final push for the committee to say we're doing this 25%, number one? Number two, did they lose an opportunity to cut further by, let's say, 50 basis points?
Well, I think it's really probably been on two fronts. I think the recession in Q1, or the negative growth rate that resulted in us actually dipping into recession, must have played quite a role. Beforehand, we didn't expect to actually be in recession by now. So, a drop or a revision downwards of 0.5 on GDP in one shot is quite a big revision for the SARB in terms of their growth expectations. So I think that definitely did play an important role. With that, better than expected inflation outcomes, especially on the core inflation front. A month or two ago, we were very surprised to see core dipping from about 5.3 down to a 4.8 level. So I think the extent of the moderation in inflation has also surprised them positively. And the combination of those two factors, must have given, a perfect case for cutting. And I think that's what we've all been sort of saying. It's building, but I think if it wasn't for the public protectors' sort of suggestions, one would have probably been more confident to think it could have happened today. I think the political sort of angle to it made us a bit sort of cautious in thinking they might wait a bit and first signal a bit. So yeah, they've been bold, the way they've revised their CPI forecast down, from 5.3 to 4.9 for next year, despite sort of saying things like, electricity tariff increase might surprise us into double digits and so on. So they've been bold on what they've put on the table today. But I think in combination, would they have done 50? I don't think so. That would have been, I think, a bit of a bigger move to make, given the risks, as Siba also pointed out. And the RAND story at the background, yes, we don't know what's going to happen, but we firmly believe that we're going to see the downgrade of our local currency rating. And, so we will see that capital flowing out at some time. But it might be only in 6 or 9 months' time. And, in the meantime, the economy is bleeding. So I agree, there are rather cut then, even if you cut another 1 or 2 times. If you need to reverse, so be it. But in the meantime, help this economy that is struggling just a bit, to take the edge off the difficulty that both consumers and businesses are feeling.
And you mentioned the public protector and the whole mandate issue coming up with the Reserve Bank. Siba, you've noticed that he said he would assess or deal with the peripheral questions after the serious questions, but evidently he was bolder. He had a much more aggressive stance when he dealt with those questions. He was very, very bold on the independence. What do you make of his stance on that issue?
I took great pride listening to the governor. The whole country was waiting to hear what he said. I know it has been said before, but in this platform, it showed that South Africa is not a banana republic. The quality of institutions that we have, the quality of leadership that exists has been demonstrated here. Defending the cause of a central bank, as we've seen here, it is actually not like this elsewhere. Some countries struggle to have this independence demonstrated in this way. In fact, you'll find political machinations that prohibit a central bank governor to be as bold as what we have seen today. I'm proudly South African. I take heart in seeing what the quality of institutions we have demonstrated by the central bank.
What difference does it make that he did this today?
A huge amount of difference, because once there's a question about a central bank, it means there's gold at a central bank, there are foreign exchange reserves that are sitting at a central bank, and there's a profit that they make because they are a going concern. Once there are questions about an institution like that, meaning that someone can put their hands into some of these state funds, when you have such independence coming out, protected by the Constitution, and him speaking this way, it creates a huge amount of confidence towards an emerging market country that is world-class, and that's what South Africa is. For those that wanted to invest in SA or to come back and invest further, he said further that South Africa is good credit. And all the actions, all the ways that he prepared, you could see was reading them, suggest South Africa is good credit. Although there may be changing of hands of the quality of the investors, because some are speculative and some are investment grade. When we become non-investment grade or speculative, we still have investment. It remains strong credit, which can be a good investment.
And I think that brings us to the next point, this whole issue about confidence, because confidence is important, as he said, with regards to investment in the country. I want to tackle that when we come back. Let's just go quickly for an ad break. When we come back, more analysis on that latest interest rate decision by the Reserve Bank.